Hey guys, Mr. Happy here, and today I'm bringing you the final part of my Heavensward ability wishlist video series. This is a 3-part series where I talk about abilities that I'd like to see them add for each of the jobs that are currently in the game when the expansion comes out in spring 2015. Now, part 1 was tanks, part 2 is DPS, so the final part here is going to be our healers, Scholar, and White Mage. Disclosure that this is in no way saying that these abilities are going to be in the game. It's total speculation. It's totally baseless. I know everybody has those kind of abilities that they wish their job could get. This is just me expressing mine. So with that out of the way, we're going to look at the Scholar first and the White Mage second. And I had a lot of difficulties doing the Scholar for a few reasons. The first one is that you have to consider that almost anything that you're going to give the Scholar that's a class ability, such as a trait or a class ability, that it's likely going to affect the way that Summoner plays as well, because it's going to have to be attached to Arcanist and not Scholar directly. I really hope that they decide to separate these in the expansion, because it would just make adding new abilities for both jobs so much simpler than it is now. Another thing is, Scholar does so many things so well. Eloquium is such a powerful tool. The only thing they really lack is powerful heals. You know, even single target and AoE heals, White Mage just has them trumped in both those areas, but the amount of defensive cooldowns they have, abilities they can place either on the tank, such as Eye for Eye, or on the boss, Virus, Eloquium to shield damage on the tank, Sucker to reduce damage for everybody, or to absorb damage for everybody, Sacred Soil everybody can stand in to reduce damage. They have so much damage prevention that I didn't want to just all of a sudden give them big heals on top of that, because then they'd just be the perfect job. On top of the lack of an MP issue, it was just so much to come up with. But I did my best here. I only had a few ideas, mostly because I couldn't think of stuff that would work with Arcanist, Summoner, and Scholar. So the first thing I want to see is a new summon for the Scholars. We have Selene, we have Eos, but who's to say we have to keep using these fairies? Let's see if we can learn FFXIV. That is something that I think would work pretty well. Now, very basically, it has an embrace-like ability called Holy Fire, but the big thing I want them to be able to do, Flames of Rebirth, a combat raise, something that obviously wouldn't cost MP other than the cost of summoning the Phoenix, which is its own deal. That would just be something I feel like is thematic to the Phoenix, and it's a powerful utility that they can bring. Think about a combat raise that just doesn't cost any MP, it's just on like a 3 to 5 minute cooldown or something along those lines. How useful that would be in certain encounters, or in certain groups where they're learning encounters and they have deaths at regular intervals. I feel like the FFXIV would have it's just a very powerful utility to bring to the raid. Now, the other two abilities were the ones that I had trouble coming up with, because you already have the Premier Healing Pet and the Premier Support Pet. So where does the FFXIV really fit? What could it possibly do? It would have to be some sort of mix of both, and based on the combat raise ability, it's already looking like more of a supporty pet. So Flame Barrier was the first thing I came up with, and that was an Eloquium-like shield without the heal. Different buff altogether, so it can stack with Eloquium, but it allows you to do things like shield multiple targets while not giving up your ability to heal. So for example, turn 10 is an area where you have Prey. Prey is a debuff, it deals any damage, it does its effect, so you need to prevent it from doing any damage. Very often, groups will either have the Scholar and the White Mage split up the responsibilities, or the Scholar will handle it all alone with 2 quick Eloquiums while the tanks run defensive cooldowns or something along those lines. Lots of different ways to do it, but imagine having the ability to Eloquium one target and command your FFXIV to Flame Shield the other one. You just took care of all those problems, and you just gave this pet a very viable place to work. Thinking of it in other places is where the difficulty would come. Don't know how powerful the shield would be, but it would at least be powerful enough to be a meaningful cooldown. Put it on like 30-second cooldown or something along those lines. Make it replace the Silence or the Whispering Dawn of Eos and Selene. And the last ability, I only knew what I wanted it to look like, I guess, but I didn't really know what I wanted it to do, and that was Fountain of Flames. I wanted some sort of placed AoE by the Phoenix that has some sort of beneficial effect for those who stand in it. I don't know what it could be. I thought of making it a gradually increasing heal over time, but you have Whispering Dawn, which is already your AoE heal over time, and it's not restricted by forcing you to stand in one spot. I could make it exactly like Sacred Soil, but not as effective, or make it not last as long, or put it on a much longer cooldown, which would kind of go with the theme of the Eloquium-like shield that doesn't give the heal. This could be like a Sacred Soil that doesn't cost an Aether Flow stack. The thing is, those are already utilities that the Scholar has. they'd really have to determine a fight where both of these utilities, having extra versions of them, would be super handy. I could think of turn 13 being a great place for a pet like this, but in some place like that, you have other uses for things like Sacred Soil. You have other, for use like Eos and Selene. They have their place in those fights, and that's why this whole idea is kind of risky. On top of that, because there is no Summon 3 ability on Arcanist, this would have to be one of the 2 job abilities that they might be getting, if that is the only amount that they are getting in the first place. So, Phoenix Eggy is my first idea, and after that, honestly, not too many great ideas for the Scholar. First thing, this has to happen, an ability that makes your next heal automatically crit. I don't care if it's Physic, Colloquium, or Sucker, whatever you use, they all have benefits to being an automatic crit. Physic is a big heal, one big heal on with an automatic crit. You have your Colloquium, which is a huge, it's a big heal, and it's a huge shield. And then Sucker just ensures the crit, just ensures everyone has that little bit of extra mitigation. Put it on a somewhat long cooldown, not like 3 minutes, maybe 2 minutes of a cooldown for something like that. I also considered making that an Arcanist ability, something that you could use with your Fester or your Bane or something along those lines, something that makes them have this automatic effect that enhances them on a serious level. But I'd have to go back and look at Summoner to see if I wanted to add something along those lines, especially with the next trait and abilities. Similar to Summoner, the Empowered Aetherflow trait and the Empower Aetherflow ability, I had to carry those over to Scholar because those were Arcanist abilities. Those were an Arcanist trait and an Arcanist ability. So that is something that I absolutely had to bring over to the Scholar. Again, I felt shoehorned. I had to use it. So, trait for Empowered Aetherflow, same thing as it was for Summoner in yesterday's video, 20% chance for Aetherflow stacks to be refunded when they are used, and empower the next Aetherflow ability used. So for Energy Drain, it'd be to get more HP and MP. I think Scholars don't even want that. I think Scholars would just want Energy Drain to not miss. Guarantee that Energy Drain can't miss. I know some Scholars who hate that Energy Drains can miss. Bane, same effect as Summoner. Dots will always be the maximum duration when they are spread out. Lustrate, I had a bunch of ideas for this. I ended on just making the heal more enhanced instead of like 20%, make it 30%. I also considered making it a portion of the heal would hit in a splash, but again, I didn't want to make their AoE healing too good, which is why even when I considered that, it was going to be based on the HP that was actually healed and not just a flat percentage heal. For example, somebody has 4k HP and you hit them with a Lustrate and it's an empowered one, it would do the 20% healing onto them for 800, but it would only splash to everyone else for maybe 200 or 300 or something along those lines. Then it's at that point, then it's so insignificant that it barely matters. Of course, with more HP comes more healing, but I ultimately landed on the heal just being enhanced because for Sacred Soil, I wanted to make Sacred Soil automatically trigger that additional effect. Whenever you lay Sacred Soil down, there's a chance that your next sucker will be free. So I wanted it to automatically trigger that effect because that is true empowerment. It is a good amount of AoE mitigation and healing all combined in the same package. Probably be the most useful place out of all of those, really, to use the Empowered Aetherflow. And then, of course, the extra ability is to automatically empower your next Aetherflow ability. Put that on a moderate cooldown as well, same as the Summoner. And to be honest, I couldn't really think of much just because of that whole Arcanist into Scholar and Summoner. I considered giving them each an ability, way of the Scholar and way of the Summoner, that would change certain abilities for them, but that's something that they could just build into the Soul Crystal, such as, you know, changing Enhanced Intelligence to Enhanced Mind for Scholar. I don't know. It's really, really weird the way they do it, and I really hope they don't have another class split into 2 jobs. Yoshi P has expressed that he's not a big fan of that idea, and I really hope they don't decide to do it again in the expansion. Moving on, Scholar was the one I had difficulty with. White Mage, I had a difficulty in that there were so many ideas that I had that I couldn't, restricting them to how many I have was really, really hard. That was actually the opposite problem, because yesterday, before I really started thinking of this, I had no ideas for the White Mage at all, and then they all just started coming to me as soon as I was done with the video. So let's scroll down to White Mage and get to those ideas. Now, this first one, I know people who played Final Fantasy XI are going to look at it and be like, no, that should be Red Mage's ability. That's assuming Red Mage ever makes it into the game. It's something Yoshi P wants in the game, but we don't know how it's going to be designed, what its role is going to be. If at that point we're going to have White Mage and Black Mage branching into Red Mage, in that case, they could get Phalanx anyway. There's a lot of things that could go into it, and of course, it could be cross-classed, whatever. So, Phalanx enhances the physical defense of the targeted player. I wanted them to have sort of a different approach on defensive cooldowns. White Mage is not very is not very big in terms of defensive cooldown. They have Stone Skin, and they have the extra magic defense on Protect. Other than that, it's all Divine Seal, Presence of Mind, Shadow Saints. They're all personal cooldowns that they help to enhance their heals, whereas they don't have many defensive cooldowns. Phalanx, being only physical defense, makes it only work against certain attacks, makes it only effective against certain attacks. So it's not something that you just have and you're going to use no matter what. It's something that you have to plan with your tanks, and gives White Mage a little bit of an extra edge in terms of why would I bring White Mage over Scholar. The big thing I wanted to give them, if I'm giving a Phoenix Eggy a combat raise that costs no MP and it's just on a cooldown, I wanted to give White Mage is something that gives is a bit more unique of a raise effect for them, and that is the very popular re-raise effect. It allows the user to resurrect upon death in a weakened state, so it still gives you weakness. It can only be used once per battle. You can cast it before a battle begins, but it cannot be cast in battle. So because of that, you can simply just use it before the battle starts, and you have one free raise on yourself. After that, if you die again, you're going to need a raise like everybody else does. So it has its strengths, it has its weaknesses, and I feel like it would be another strong aspect and a very well-themed aspect, something that they could bring to the party. You could give the very same thing to Phoenix Eggy, have him cast it on somebody, but I wanted it to be something for White Mage. White Mage and Phoenix kind of have the same theme, so it was difficult for me to decide that. Now for traits, they were way easier to do on traits. This is probably the easiest job I could have come up with traits for. They have so many abilities that are class abilities and not job abilities that would work really well with traits. One big one, trait, Saint's Blessing, direct heals, may occasionally reduce the cooldown of Shroud of Saints. For clarification, a direct heal is a single target heal that has an initial healing component. So regen does not have an initial healing component. It is not a direct heal. Medica, Medica 2, Cure 3, those are not direct heals. They are AoE heals. So basically, Cure 1 and Cure 2, as well as Benediction, would all, I guess, benefit from Saint's Blessing. And that's because one of their biggest issues is MP, but they are a fairly proc-based job. I mean, you look, Asuna has a proc, Cure has a proc, Cure 2 is a proc that procs into Cure 3. They have procs. It's a pretty common thing amongst the jobs, so I wanted to give them a potential proc that rewards them for direct healing a target. Another thing, and this was one I either wanted to do on top of the other trait or on the side, you know, one or the other for these traits. And that was enhanced regen. Casting Cure 1 on a regened target, not regen's target, may occasionally refresh its duration. That way, you know, you can regen all the targets you want and they're going to fall off, but if you Cure 1 a target, there's a chance the regen might refresh all the way. Another MP saving tool, which is why I only wanted to do one or the other between Saint's Blessing or enhanced regen. Maybe they would work fine together if you make the chance for Saint's Blessing like 5%, so it's super low, and only make it reduce it by like 1 or 2 seconds maximum. But I feel like both together may be too much control over MP for the White Mage, especially because I'm considering that one of the jobs in the expansion may have an ability similar to Goad for White Mages. White Mages, even in Final Fantasy XI, have an ability where they sacrifice HP to give MP, I believe, and sacrifice HP to give HP, but that's something I want to leave as a theme for an entirely other job. So the last ability I decided to include here, but by far not the last ability I thought of for them, was Mystic Boon. Mystic Boon will mark a player, you know, you can cast it on a player, and it will mark them with Mystic Boon. That player will be healed for a small amount every time a direct heal is cast on somebody else. Most often, if you have a main tank and an off tank, there's lots of different ways you could use it. You could cast it on the main tank so that if you have to cure the off tank, the main tank also gets heals. You could also do it vice versa. Also, if there's somebody in that raid encounter who takes more damage as a DPS than anybody else, you could cast it on them for the same reason, or you could cast it on the tank and then make sure when you heal them. Casting it on the main tank is usually okay, but one thing I want to make sure that's clear, direct heals on the boon target do not trigger this effect. If you heal the person who was marked with Mystic Boon, they would get no benefit from it. They would just be the target of your heal, and that's the end of it. Also, if the marked player dies, this effect is removed. You can place it on another person at the cost of some MP, but I really want them to have that sort of ability. These are all things that I really feel like complement the White Mage, and they are things that they should be capable of. Again, these are just wish lists though, so obviously none of this stuff is confirmed to be coming into the game. These are just some of the abilities that I wish to see healers get in the expansion. Now, I know there's some healers out there that have huge wish lists. I would just like to remind you that the AoE stone skin is coming. That's why it's not on the list. It's coming in patch 2.45 on December 9th. So, scholars, white mages, let me know what you guys would like to get. What are your wish lists for Heavensward and abilities that you want to see your jobs get? And how do you feel about this whole scholar summoner thing? I used to be okay with it. I'm starting to hate it now when I'm starting to develop abilities for it. I can imagine that the developers are feeling the same way. But anyway, guys, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comment section in the video below. And until next time, take care.